Welcome to Off Script with Dan Dwyer on Robin Hood Radio, featuring in-depth interviews with guests from the world of theater and allied arts. Underwriting support from Johnny Cake Books in Salisbury, Connecticut, whose collection of rare, collectible, and out-of-print books is housed in a 19th century cottage in one of the most old-fashioned small towns in New England. And now, here's the host of Off Script, Dan Dwyer.
Thanks, Marshall, and summer's flying by, and so is the Berkshire Theatre summer season. Shakespeare and Company in Lenox has already staged in its Shakespeare program, Twelfth Night, and it's in its contemporary program, a very successful production of The Waverley Gallery. With me today is Alan Burrows, the artistic director of Shakespeare and Company, to talk about what's still on and to talk about what's coming up for the rest of the season. Welcome, Alan.
Hey, sorry.
That's
sorry
okay.
About that.
We're live.
To interject in the middle of your laying out our season. Apologies for that.
That's quite all right. Congratulations on another really solid season. Before we talk about what's coming up for the rest of for August and the rest of the season, I should note that if you're listening live today, you can still see Twelfth Night running through just August 4th. Alan, you directed this production, and I know you spent a lifetime in theater, specifically a lot of work at Shakespeare and Company and with Shakespeare. And whether you're an actor or an audience member, and no matter how many times you've seen a particular play of Shakespeare's, you go back to it, and there's always something else. When you went back to Twelfth Night this time, what did you see in it that you hadn't seen before?
I just was astounded once again at the elevation of the poetry and how it kind of transcended, the relationships. I've been in 4 productions of this play. Once here at Shakespeare and Company in '91, and then I played Sebastian there, and then I was in it at Long Wharf in New Haven several years ago, and then I did it up in Boston. This is the first time I've directed it, and it's almost as if I had never seen the play before. That is how wily and multi-layered this language is and works on so many levels. It's fanciful, it's festive, it's certainly at times riotously funny, and yet very deep and moving as well at other times. It's almost as if, Shakespeare even was able to have a lens on modern-day society and be commenting on it from that way. And I set the play in 1959, and I thought, well, this is design-wise a beautiful period culturally, but also it was a time when everything was about to shift dramatically in the world as we blew open the 60s. And so it seemed fitting. It was the first year that Motown opened its doors, and the clothes, the design, and I set it in a dance hall on a boardwalk by the seashore in a place called Lear. It's not necessarily New Jersey, definitely not. It has a European feel as well. But so for that reason, there's a richness to the language that really supports and feeds and energizes these relationships that are so much at the beginning of the play about longing for love, longing to be found, to find the other, and to lose oneself in that search. And so it works out this play. I'm ready to turn around and do it again.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, you've got a couple of occasions, if you're listening live, as I said, until August 4th.
We go to this Sunday. Yep.
Yeah, now let's talk about Taming of the Shrew. I went up last night to see it, and it was a perfect summer evening. It takes place at the Mount, where Shakespeare and Company started. It's in back of the shed, which is a gently sloping, nicely shaded lawn that slopes downward towards a wooded glen. And therein sits your production of Taming of the Shrew. So people can come early. They can bring a picnic. They can set up a blanket, which in a reserved spot will run the front row. There are chairs to acquire on site if you don't want to bring your own. But what I wanted to talk about is that it's basically a youth cast. It's basically teenagers and a couple of kids, I think, who came out of graduate school. It's a thoroughly charming production. I was really, really taken by it, and it preserves all the best parts of Shakespeare's text, but you bring it in about 90 minutes, which is really, really crisp, too. Tell us about how that production came about, and as I understood, it's part of a tour, and this is the kids' last gig.
That's right, yeah. It's part of our Northeast Regional Tour that we do in rep with Hamlet. Some of your readers may have seen the New York Times article that a reporter embedded herself with the tour and jumped in the van and toured with these actors for, I think, almost a week. They go on a 17-week tour all over the Northeast. And then they did Hamlet and Taming of the Shrew. And then we expand the cast for the production on the Mount. We double it, actually. It goes from 6 to 12 actors. And so it's a way of fleshing it out. It's a way of kind of rediscovering those relationships. And they just do a fantastic job with it. And the cast that's been doing it for all those weeks is very welcoming to the newcomers. And that's what makes it seem so alive and vibrant and really flawless.
Well, credit to your program, a credit to the ethos that you established. What I was most impressed about was the poise of these, and I'm going to say kids, not in a pejorative way, the poise of these kids, not just their poise on stage, but there's a very welcoming little prelude, as is done often in Shakespeare's plays, that the kids address to the audience themselves. But what most impressed me was at the end you do a talkback, and I generally can loathe talkbacks if they're not done properly. But again, it was perfectly charming, and the kids are efficient and polite and get right to what they want to talk about with the audience. Yeah, it's a remarkable crew of kids. How'd you put that together?
Well, that's a credit to Kelly Galvin. You know, that's how she thinks. She's very laser-like in her thinking, and the fact that they ask a certain set of questions or make a certain set of statements in that talkback really frames the discussion very succinctly, and that really works well for the audience, so that you don't meander into questions like how long does it take you to learn your lines and how do you learn all those lines, but really asking the important questions about this play, about the relationships between the sexes, and of course that iconic and very controversial ending to the play, which is worth coming to see for that in itself, I should say. So.
The other thing that impressed me about it was the choreography or the fight direction or the movement direction. You've got these young people, but it's one of the best fight sequences I've ever seen between Cade and Petruchio.
It's great. They are hand in glove out there, and just think those two have been doing it for a long time, so they could do it blindfolded, that particular fight.
The other thing that's great about Cade is that she's got this raspy, horsey voice, so she comes across kind of tomboyish and kind of looking for a fight. It's
you
really
wouldn't
great.
meddle with her, would you?
Yeah. Anyway, in case you're just joining us, my guest is Alan Burrows. He's the artistic director up at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox. We're talking about, naturally, Shakespeare and Company's season, which is, let's say, half to be seen yet. So Taming of the Shrew with the kids at the Mount runs through August 17th, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a delightful evening of theater for the family and for a date. It's wonderful. Let's turn our talk to the next big Shakespeare production you're doing back at Shakespeare and Company campus in the Garden, Merry Wives of Windsor.
Yeah,
how did this get?
Kevin Coleman, our director of education.
Pardon me?
It's directed by Kevin Coleman, our director of education.
Why did you? Why Merry Wives of Windsor this season?
I wanted to put a play in the Roman Garden Theater that was just really, for this summer, a lot of fun, and it seemed like a natural fit. We spent a lot of time thinking how that Roman Garden Theater will really bring out the best in a play, and the last 2 years with As You Like It in the Tempest, we did them in the round. This is done on a thrust stage. We've moved the configuration around a little, and the big building, the big empty building, the Sanford White building that you see in the garden there, that doubles as Windsor Castle. So there were a lot of things that seemed to make sense. Just the fact also that it's just such a riotous romp, this play, and we feel like people could use a lot of good laughs these days. So it made sense. That's why I did 2 comedies this summer. Although Twelfth Night isn't, really the only thing that makes it a comedy entirely is because the people get together at the end. So, but it's got a lot of good pathos in it as well for those looking for that.
Merry Wives of Windsor opens soon, August 8th, is it?
That's right, yeah.
And it runs right through the Labor Day weekend up through September 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's shift gears. For people who don't know about Shakespeare and Company, like every regional theater pretty much in the country these days, and you run 2 programs. You've got the Shakespeare program, and then you've got in the Elaine Bernstein Theater a contemporary program.
Right.
I mentioned before you had a very successful production of Waverly Gallery, and I saw last night and reviewed very positively The Children.
Right.
That is anything but it's got humor in it for sure, for certain, but it's anything but a barrel of laughs.
Right. It's an intriguing play. It's got a lot of mystery to it. I saw the play in New York and immediately got the rights to it because I thought it would really work in a very intimate setting that our Elaine Bernstein Theater is. Sometimes I'll see these shows on a big Broadway stage, and I'll enjoy them, especially for their story and their relationships. But I really think in terms of the venue, they can often be more suited to our intimate little space that is the 200-seat theater, the Elaine Bernstein Theater. And that was what really struck me about this play, The Children, because there's really no getting away from it. There are a lot of great laughs, as you mentioned, but there's also this sense of unease that kind of pervades the play. And I just, with those 3 actors, I just find it a great evening of theater.
Yeah, it is. It's funny that you mentioned the Broadway production because I saw that too 2 years ago, and the play itself, it started at the Royal Court.
Yeah.
It, by the way, this is a parenthetical comment, but it is so Royal Court in its temperament and aesthetic. But beyond that, I saw the Broadway production. So when I saw yours, even though, and I'm saying this in the most polite way, don't take it negatively, even though your production, because it's in that intimate space, does not have, let's say, the trappings of a big Broadway production.
Right.
What your production brought home to me is that it's all about text and character, and you really, really drill down into those. What I discovered after the production was that 2 of the characters are actually married in real life. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and that was an interesting casting choice because Ariel Bach and Johnny Epstein are indeed married, and so I didn't cast them as the married couple because I thought it would be more interesting just to mix things up in that way. And that way, any kind of insidious habits that they may have that overlapped with the play, they could explore this different relationship on stage together.
But there's also and I don't know whether I was saying something or not, but what did occur to me, and what I noticed rather, and I didn't think about this until after the play, after I learned that they were a married couple, is that there's one scene where the male character places his hands intimately on the body of this woman, and I looked at it and I said, "Wait a minute, that's for real." You know the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah,
and if they were unreal,
and
if
it's a critical moment in the play.
Yeah,
it's a critical plot point as well in the play. And 2 adult actors would play that moment probably the same. But you're still.
Well, there was no doubt about what was happening. And whereas, if they weren't, there could have been a little. Your intimacy coordinator could have had some direction there. Speaking of that, now we're going a little off topic. like a lot of people in the listening area, we go to the theater in New York a lot, and a couple of people have mentioned to me recently that it's the first time that they've noticed that plays are now getting intimacy coordinators along with fight coordinators.
Yeah.
You've been at the
Claire
business
Warden
a long
is actually
time.
a company member and a teacher with us, and she actually just won a Drama Desk Award for her work on Frankie and Johnny, Dwyer-Allyn, as an intimacy coordinator. And there was a big article in the New York Times about it with Mike Shannon. They interviewed him. I think it really can facilitate getting to the root of the matter in making people feel comfortable, as well as portraying the reality of a situation, and it can keep things in a very professional realm rather than a kind of devil-may-care attitude of, let's just let's go for this and see what comes out. It's a very step-by-step process in which she breaks down the intimacy of a scene in a surgical fashion, and I think it's a lot of people are going to be employing intimacy coordinators going forward. People are, the verdict is still out with everybody. Some people are like, well, I'm an actor. What do you think I was hired for? So that I could, handle this with the director and the other actor, but. It doesn't always go that way. Sometimes you really need to have, as with a fight choreographer, a movement choreographer, you have to have an intimacy consultant brought in.
Yeah. In case you're just joining us, the program's Off Script. I'm your host, Dan Dwyer. My guest is Ellen Burrows. He's the artistic director of Shakespeare and Company up in Lenox, and we're talking about their summer season. I want to end the program up on Shakespeare, but let's talk briefly, if we can, about the two contemporary plays that are coming in, Top Dog, Underdog, and then later in the fall, Time Stands Still. Mm-hmm. Why Top Dog, Underdog?
Sorry?
Why Top Dog, Underdog?
Susan Laurie Parks is, I think she's going to go down as one of the greatest writers of the century, and I had a feeling that she was going to come out with something really powerful in New York in the spring, which indeed she did, with White Noise. It's not that I was prescient. She's so prolific that it was a fairly safe bet. So that when I came across Top Dog, Underdog again, which we had been looking at, I thought it would provide a context to this extraordinary writer's body of work, because it's one of her earliest plays, certainly the one that she was best known for. And I think it really brings into focus the questions that we have to ask about identity, about race, about all the conversations that we're having right now. And so for me, it was a very powerful play, beautifully written play, that will allow people an outlet to have those conversations in a certain context and all the ramifications of it. And so that's why I went with Top Dog, Underdog, because for all of those reasons.
And it did get the Pulitzer Prize,
the topicality of it, as well as the power of the writing and the relationships.
Yeah. It got the Pulitzer Prize that year too, as
well. That's right. Yeah.
Time Stands Still is pretty well known to a lot of people in Robin Hood's listening area, because Laura Linney, of course, did the production in New York some time ago. You're bringing it back for the fall season.
I am. Yeah. What I've been really struck by. I was reading an article recently before choosing the play about the amount of foreign correspondents who continue to be killed overseas as they try to bring the truth of encounters around the world, both military and non, but human rights issues, and how they sacrifice themselves for their work. And so that was had been swirling around in my mind anyway, and then I came across Time Stands Still. It was not long after the journalist Tim Hetherington had been killed, and it made me want to bring into focus the fact that the way these people give themselves to their work. And it's a beautifully written play, Donald Margulies, of course, and but it's also a very powerful and a fun play too. There's the exchange between all the characters is rapid fire and really draws you into the story.
Yeah, they talk like real reporters.
It's about the sacrifices we make for the truth and our work, and that's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what I really wanted to get to, Coriolanus. Because you've got these other great things we've talked about already coming up, but you're doing a special staged reading of Coriolanus, I guess just, 3 or 4 performances?
It's 5 performances. Originally it was going to have John Douglas Thompson in it, but he stepped out. He had to step out because he got a film. And so I will actually be stepping back into the role of Coriolanus, which originally Tina and I had been talking about me doing, and then I heard that John was interested in doing it, and so I moved over to Ophidius so that he could do Coriolanus, but then he got a film.
Got it.
So I'm back to Coriolanus.
Well, thank you. It's interesting that you clarified that, because I'm looking at the program, and the program's got the picture of John Douglas Thompson with you in the back. So I was trying to figure out if you were playing Ophidius or he was playing Coriolanus, but now you're playing Coriolanus. Good.
Now I'm back to playing Coriolanus, and Ophidius will be played by Christopher Edwards, who's the artistic director of Actors Shakespeare Project in Boston. So now we'll have 3 artistic directors in one room. So what can go wrong?
Well, let's talk about the mother. The mother's being played by the one and only legendary Tina Packer.
That's right. And Tina's asked me to work with her on this project for a couple of years. So it is, a staged reading, so it will be more fully realized than just, music stands and people just standing up there quickly. It'll be fleshed out a little, but I think the language of this play, what it says about leadership and the examination of leadership and what happens when someone is maybe a powerful military commander but does not make for a good leader, and the discussions that ensue around that. And we will be having we'll have a talk back after every performance. Just to talk about leadership, talk about the power dynamics that are involved in the play and the ramifications of it and the different iterations of it and the resonance of it for today. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and I'm looking forward. Tina and I have never been on stage together before in 40 years. So
it's historic. And besides the power elements of the play, which and it's one of, we can say, Shakespeare's lesser-known tragedies. Mm-hmm. It's not that frequently staged. I did see recently Dan Sullivan's direction of it in the Park with Jonathan Cake as Coriolanus and Kate Burton as Volumnia. So I'm really interested, particularly given the persona of Tina and your prowess and history with the theater, how you guys are going to play the mother-son thing. Because that's a whole other
really
element.
Interested to see how it unfolds as well. We're a few weeks out of rehearsal, and we're looking forward to hashing it all out in the room, where we feel kind of fortunate for a stage reading to have 5 days of rehearsal. And Daniela Berowne is going to have some fascinating insight into the play, and so we'll see how it breaks out. I mean, Volumnia is, she is a powerhouse, like Tina, of a figure, and someone who has a transformation really into being part of the military machine at the end, and it's a fascinating relationship. Not one that I had with my mother, so I won't be repeating anything from my own life.
We don't have to go down out that Freudian branch.
No, we don't.
But but sooner or later, I think you perhaps you will. I mean, it's like with so much Shakespeare, you can talk about it from so many points of view. But the question that I came away with when I saw Coriolanus, and I had never seen it before, and I'm really eager to see it again, is Coriolanus a product of his mother, and is his tragedy a function of his own flawed personality, or is that relationship with the mother so entwined that he becomes entrapped by the mother's supremacy? in the end.
That may be true. That his relationship with his mother may be his Achilles heel, and it's a fascinating kind of way in which he dissolves in front of his mother, and how she's, there's a pivotal scene where she really turns him around when he has decided to turn on Rome with Aufidius, and having joined forces with Aufidius, and the power that she's still able to exert over him, and he is successful in his military life because of his single-mindedness, and she's able to cut through that in ways which, unfortunately, it seems like Shakespeare didn't portray his relationship with his wife. They didn't have that deep level of intimacy. They had a different level of care that they took with each other.
But we all, regardless of our age, we will always remain children of our parents.
That's right.
All right. Alan, thank you very much for joining us in the wrap-up of what's to come.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. The program has been Off Script. I'm your host, Dan Dwyer. We've been talking with Alan Burrows, Artistic Director of Shakespeare and Company. A lot of good stuff still coming up through August, including what we were just talking about, 5 stage performances of Coriolanus, rarely done, August 21st through 25th. Thanks for joining me on Off Script. Till the next time, enjoy summer.
Underwriting support for Off Script with Dan Dwyer from John & Cake Books in Salisbury, Connecticut, whose collection of rare, collectible, and out-of-print books is housed in a 19th century cottage in one of the most old-fashioned small towns in New England. Off Script with Dan Dwyer is also available via podcast on our on-demand page, robinhoodradio.com. Click on On Demand, and then click on Off Script with Dan Dwyer.